Hey there, you, me, and DC fans, and welcome if you are new. I am the stepson of Krypton.
Nah, Mantis.
And today we are discussing the latest and kind of a culmination of Superman news that has come out here recently. There are tidbits here and there. We're going to put it all together for you and break it down. Mantis, I'm not even going to ask if you're ready. You've got the Superman shirt on. Clearly, you're ready.
I'm
Oh,
ready.
okay. Let's go. All right, guys. So there's been a slew of Superman news here in the last week or two. Not like anything I'd say super major, but there's been a lot of little tidbits floating around here and there. We thought, you know what, it's been a little while. We've been doing a lot of comic book issues, so we wanted to kind of just maybe bring all of the news in together for you guys and break it down for you. Starting out with, I'm going to start with the one that bothers me the most is that somehow they've already come to the conclusion of what the box office weekend numbers are going to look like for Superman. And I'm like, even at the time when they first had done their projection, I'm like, it's over a month out, right? Now
Mhm.
you have to keep in mind that obviously that's how they're basing that off of. I don't know if they're going off of advanced ticket sales and things like that, but with this movie especially, you have to remember you can pay, or you could, I think it's closed now, but you could have paid a little hefty fee and have a special tickets saved through Amazon that may or may not affect things, right? There's a lot that goes into it,
I
but
I think they're taking those out. I don't think they're counting any of the Amazon
yeah,
sales in
but
the
that's what
in
I
the
mean,
factors.
right? Is if you're
Yeah.
not counting that, that's people who are gonna go see it, right? And that aren't
Oh,
gonna
it
maybe
should.
necessarily be there for your opening weekend.
Yep.
So, I think that that affects things, and maybe that's why it took a little bit of a plummet because, it was saying it was gonna have like a 135 to like 175 million, but then I saw things where like it may not break over 100 million. Now, granted, that's I think domestically.
Mhm.
So we'll see because obviously, it's got to do over 500 million to kind of break even when you think about what the studio or what the theaters are taking for obviously their cut of everything. It's got to do just over 500 million, and if it really doesn't break 800 million, people are going to say, well, it didn't beat Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. And if it doesn't break a billion, it's not really looked at it nowadays when you're talking big blockbuster superhero movies. So,
Yeah. This is saying that if you get up in the if you get the 775 or 750 million to could be considered a hit, right? Like I think it's going to surpass Man of Steel numbers. Um like you mentioned, we don't know how they're basing some of these projections. A lot of it's based off of, what its competition is during the same time frame, pre-sale numbers, which I heard were pretty good. It's not like they were bad. And then as well as a lot of the social media and marketing blitz, which in the past week they have kind of ramped that up quite a bit with a lot of talk show stuff and whatnot. So I don't know. My take on it is we'll see that honestly, it doesn't matter. We'll know after the first weekend how it's going to do. I think.
well, so we got to get through. Not only do we have to get through the first weekend, right? So we got to get through that weekend there. But the next big factor will be is what is it going to do the second weekend? How big of a drop is it going to have from the first weekend, right? Because one thing we've seen here lately with a lot of superhero movies now, I will say they haven't been on par with what we had in some of the DCEU and definitely in the earlier stages of the MCU. But we're seeing declines of 60+% from opening weekend. And given
Mhm.
that, when you have a movie like Avengers Endgame that broke all these box office records, didn't have that steep of a decline, which you would expect that, right? If you went super high the next week, and you're not going to come anywhere near that. They didn't have those kinds of declines, but these other movies that are barely hitting their box office numbers have a 60+% decline. That says something for your movie. It means you're going to be in trouble to get to your overall
Mhm.
domestic number and even global number that you want to hit, said, trying
I
to like this hit that 500 million mark.
I think what you see, I wouldn't apply when you say, well, we look at how superhero movies perform the second weekend. I would necessarily attribute that to this movie in particular, especially if you're comparing it to Marvel, because these characters in this iteration, no one knows anything about. They don't know these characters. They don't know these versions of these characters. These are all brand new, new universe, completely different properties. I think there's going to be plus, there's we discussed this previously. There is a lot of replay value with the younger youth aspect of this film. It's made more for the whole family, so I think you will get a lot of. I think you'll have a better second weekend performance
Performance? Yes, your performance. You know, the performance like sexual?
than most comic book movies.
Well, and again, there's going to be those people that they watch this and they're like, I didn't catch it because again, it's a new universe, right? And we're seeing a lot of characters we haven't seen in Superman movies, and there are a lot of characters just in this movie that
Mhm.
there's going to be even like us, you got your nerds that are gonna, and I can drop the N word because it's our word, right? That go see it a second time to catch the things they didn't, maybe they didn't because again, like for me, you get so caught up in certain aspects that maybe you miss those details. So you go see it a second time, and you're going to
Mhm.
have that. Whereas some of these other ones that this isn't going to be that great, and then you go in there, you're like, oh, hey, it turns out I was right. Yeah, I'm not going to go see it a second time. So you get a big tank on your second weekend. So
Yeah,
I,
I agree.
I just thought that was kind of interesting. It was that, and then obviously we know that there has been more with the screenings that people have seen of it, that I guess there is some kind of Star Wars inspired. I don't know if they're going to do an opening credits just like Star Wars, but it's going to be to the Superman theme. I don't know how they want to do that, but Mantis was telling me that there's some kind of Star Wars inspired introduction that's going to kind of explain how we are where we're at.
Yeah, there's a prequel book which I may get into later in this video. I'm not sure how long it goes, but as we previously discussed, this universe, people know superheroes exist. Okay, and there's not an origin story. So, what James Gunn has decided to do, according to some of the 30-minute screenings that have taken place, people got to see the first 30 minutes of the movie at a couple different theaters, and people were saying at the beginning of the film, there is a section that has a Star Wars inspired introduction to this DCU. Not even just the Superman movie, but maybe as an introduction to this version of the DC universe. And so there's going to be, some title cards maybe of uh, this is the universe now where superheroes exist and people are working with them and coexisting with them as metahumans day by day, that type of thing. Kind of set the scene of where we're at, type of stuff. So
So
I don't know how, there's not real good info on that format, at this point. So, but something like that.
So one thing I did read was they said that basically metahumans, these superpowered people, have been around for like 300 years in this universe. So it's not a new thing. Now, obviously, none of them are quite to like a Superman power level, and being different. And then also he's an alien, so it'd be interesting to see how they work that in. But yeah, that's why it's kind of like, oh, hey, yeah, there's Mister Terrific. Who cares? It's like, well, whatever. And these cool flying ships, nothing seems to phase them, which again kind of fits well into that comic book feel of things, where it's like, oh yeah, all this cool advanced technology exists, and people aren't like amazed anymore by 150-foot kaiju just fucking breathing fire all. They're like, that's just a normal Tuesday. So
People nowadays think their insurance rates suck. Just glad you don't live in this universe, because the insurance rates of stuff getting blown up, destroyed, have got to be through the roof.
yeah, but again, what
Um,
would that do for fucking property values in Metropolis?
oh yeah, through. I mean, you don't want to live anywhere near the city, right? Another thing too, that was mentioned is, as well as that introduction. And maybe we have discussed this because it was floating around a little bit, maybe a month or so ago, but uh, there's been changes in the editing, and I think this happened after those first screenings that they had months ago of some of the feedback, that people were not happy of some of the jokes, some of the way the pacing was in the movie. They kind of went away from the day of the week structure type movie that is that kind of inspired by All Star Superman, which if you are familiar with All Star Superman, it was kind of I think it was a 12 issue thing where they did, each comic book was an adventure, right? It wasn't like, we're doing series on the absolute stuff as well as just League Limited, where it's a continual storyline, conscious storyline of what's going on. This was each issue was a different thing. Like, well, this
like a
issue
different labor because it was like the 12. Yeah.
Yeah. So they initially, I think, had that kind of the movie was broken up into parts like that, which honestly, it's different. I kind of would have liked to see that, but I understand why they went away from it. It doesn't appeal to modern audiences. If you're a comic book lover, you'd probably like us, like I'd be fine with that. But I could see why they didn't, and the test audience apparently agreed with that. So apparently they went away from that.
Well, and that was when they said, like they moved away from that episodic feel, which is exactly what you're talking about, right? And I think because as people, we've gotten so used to having these 6 to 8 episode TV series, right? They give us all that detail and all that, kind of like we've talked about with the Lanterns series going to be coming out on HBO. That you don't want to go to theaters and see that, because if you think about the Zack Snyder Justice League, it almost, the way they broke it up seemed episodic, right? Like, here's this episode, here's this episode. When of course you got something that's 4 hours long, you got to kind of do that. So, maybe it was that kind of a situation again. You break it up to kind of just give it a more of a flow instead of here's this episode. Because I kind of took it as like he and Lois would be talking, and as they're talking and they're discussing certain things, they would flash back and you get this episode and then this episode. And maybe that didn't work. Maybe that's why that fucking conversation was like 12 minutes long. And they're like, yep, we'll nix that.
Yeah.
So,
and there's been some feedback from people that, have seen the whole film. A couple of people, one said the final cut of Superman has been described as Superman 2 on steroids. Now, they didn't say if it was the Donner cut or not, but if it's Donner cut, that's cool. It said very silly, very big. And then another guy kind of replying to that tweet, said he described the final film as a live action episode of Superman the Animated Series, which would be very cool. And now that I think about it, even watching like the trailers that we've seen, it kind of does feel that way.
Well, like, I think the thing is what gives it that kind of feel too is like when you see the kaiju and they're fighting, and of course, if you piece all the scenes together where the buildings were kind of toppling like dominoes, right? And you see, and we did the video, if you watch our breakdown on up here, that like where we really kind of pause and you see that one building fall and it's going to hit the bridge. Well, then when we got the next little tidbit of release on it, you see him holding that up and he's looking over, and he's only a couple inches off the ground, but he's looking over at a car and the lady's in the car, right? That's all very Superman animated series-ish style, right? Because you're not used to seeing that kind of stuff in the movie. Because like in Man of Steel, that everybody wants to compare this one already to, I mean, they just nuked buildings in there and never showed you that aspect of it, right? You never got to see the personal aspect of what happened to all the people in that building, because it's Metropolis and there wasn't a lot of time to evacuate all these buildings. So I think that adds a more of like, Superman the Animated Series feel to it. And I love that. Like, add that to it. Because Superman the Animated Series I thought was great. And add the comic books to it. Not all of them, but add that comic booky feel to it. I'm here for that. That is a completely different Superman than we have seen.
Yeah, and there was, like I mentioned before, you said they're doing the Media Blitz, the Jimmy Kimmel show. I'm not sure if you got to see that little tidbit because they had Nicholas Holt as well as David Cornsweet on the show with him, and they were doing an interview or whatever. And they on those shows they have, hey, let's check out a clip from the movie, and they show this clip of them as Superman burst into Lex's office, and he is pissed because he thinks Lex took crypto. And of course, Lex is like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And Superman just flips his desk into the window, and Tess is there and she's like freaking out. And of course, she got her phone out. She's recording it.
Oh, yeah, that's going to be.
Lex, I tried to stop him.
Fine, Heather. Superman, we finally meet. Would you like a coffee?
Where's the dog?
Dog?
The dog, loser! You took the dog!
That's right, Eve. Get all of this.
Where's the dog?
I have no clue what you're talking about.
He's just a dog.
I don't know what dog you're talking about.
which is totally fucking
Yep.
modern people.
Totally on
Like,
brand with how what people would do today.
Yeah. Fuck it, I'm not gonna help. Let me get my fucking phone out. I want to fucking record this shit, right? Like that. I mean, you see it all the time. People were taking it. They're like, "Oh, he would never do that. It's just not on brand for." And I'm like, I mean, from the other films, probably not. But like, if you know the comic books, that's one on brand for Lex. He plays dumb, and two, Superman does get pissed off. You know, he does.
But he flips a desk, right? It's like he didn't go John Wick on him, right? Like
No.
because he took
No,
out his
he
dog,
didn't.
right? Like
Yeah.
he got mad and he's gonna raise his voice a little bit. It really because I mean, like we said in the comics in the animated series, Superman does lose his cool from time to time, especially when the people he loves the most are in danger. And every damn person watching this video right now knows that if they had superpowers and somebody fucked with your dog, you're not going to be, maintain, not going to enhance your calm,
I mean, yeah, I mean, even in Man of Steel, like Superman practically destroyed half of Smallville because
Yeah, he's like, you think you can threaten my mother,
Yeah.
and he's beating the shit out of him. But that's
Yeah.
fine. We don't talk about that.
Yeah. I'm fine with either. Either way. It is what it is. I don't really care. One other thing kind of wanted to touch on, and I don't know if you've read it, but I did check out the Superman prequel novel to youth novel. So it's
No, remember I told you
for
I was going to
younger
let you read it and see if it was just completely gibberish or
It's
if it's
not
something that
really.
an adult can read and
You can
not end up
It's
on a watch
just-
list.
Yeah, you can read it. I would suggest getting the cliff notes. Or if you're collecting stuff, it's fine to have it. It's whatever. It's
I'm gonna
more
have Gemini sum it up for me.
Yeah, it's more to kind of set the stage for the movie. I will say, it does kind of say, it walks through Clark coming to Metropolis, meeting the current people that work at the Daily Planet, and it brings in characters, like the Green Lantern, Hawkwoman, Mr. Terrific, explains the Justice Gang a little bit because that's assumed that, again, that's already an established group in the film. But one interesting thing is there is a villain in this book, Metallo, that Lex has created, and that's who he fights in the book. So and that's just I don't think that's going to spill over into the film. So but it is what it is. It's not. I wouldn't say you don't need to read it to know what's going on in this film. Most people know who those characters are, but if you don't, it is a nice little introduction to the film. So
Or you can just watch our videos because we're doing it for you
Or,
as well. So
Yeah.
now I will say the last thing here is what I think is interesting, and you had kind of touched on it a little bit before, and I just want to touch it some more.
Hey.
Is that I love there's been because we went so long without even getting a trailer for the movie, and now they are ramping up the social media and everything and marketing for it. Because like the video, like where Jimmy and he's just kind of like recording on his phone and he's kind of explaining about the Daily Planet, just as a it's obviously not in the movie. It's meant to be that kind of commercial / little social media gag.
Jimmy, this is where I work. Follow me. This is my office at the Daily Planet, aka where the magic happens. We have
Jimmy.
yeah.
Did you print that bank statement?
I'm gonna get to it.
But then Lois is over there and she's getting pissed off at him, and he's like, she's always kidding around like that. Like, I love those things that they're doing because that's kind of cool. It gives you a little insight into how Jimmy's going to be as a character in there, which is just like how Jimmy is, what you would expect him to be, not be shot in the first 30 seconds on screen and all that, which I know there are going to be people that argue that, he was just portraying a Jimmy that wasn't actually Jimmy Olsen. Doesn't matter. He still got shot and we never saw a Jimmy Olsen the rest of the time. So that was Jimmy. But I do love that they're doing that, right? Because it is kind of giving that, again, more of a nowadays feel to it. Like, he'd be recording, like some vlog videos on his phone. Like, I'm with these guys and I'm doing.
Social media is a big part of this film too. Not only with marketing, but also in the plot. So
Yeah, and that's why I love that they're kind of combining it, like, right? Because they're making it look like that is part of the plot, like the way it would look, but it's the marketing aspect of it too. So I think that's really good. I like the way they're doing that. And I
yep, yep.
again, I feel like that's going to give it a more modern day feel because it is, obviously it's kind of like if you watch The Boys, right? That that gives a realistic feel to how superheroes would be in the nowadays world and not in this Christopher Reeve when we were growing up 80s style where things weren't so intense because everything you do is going to be scrutinized and filmed to be blasted all over YouTube and other social media almost instantly.
Yeah,
So
they tried to do that in the Justice League in the DCEU. Like they tried to with the beginning of the film with Superman, with the kid in his phone taking the little smart video of Superman. Didn't really work.
because I
And
CGI'd
this,
out his mustache. But
yeah,
yeah, it didn't because it just seems so oddly placed as well. Whereas I feel
yeah.
like in this movie, from what we've seen, is it'll fit, especially since they're a news organization. So
And look, I don't like any of the social media nonsense. I'm not about all that. I don't get into that. I don't take pictures and post it. I don't take vlogs. I don't take Instagrams or any of that shit. But I get why it's in the film. I understand it.
100%. Because
So,
yeah, I'm right there with you. Because other than doing this, we don't really do social media. The Yumi DC does have a. Do we have a Twitter? Is that a thing?
yeah, we have Twitter. We do. It's been a minute since I posted on it.
To be fair,
Which
he's in
I
charge of
do.
social media. On that, I do the
I
editing.
do
He's in
that.
charge of social media. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm looking forward to it. I want to go into this believing again. Like
We need to get our tickets, by the way.
we do need to go ahead and get the tickets because it's getting close. So I want to go
And
in this believing the best because he's my favorite character, and I don't want it to be a bad movie. I want to be able to get into these bigger ensemble movies and these, get some Dark Side, get some, a better Doomsday in here, Brainiac, and things like that. So I'm holding out hope that
I am
he's not going to let me
gonna
down.
Yeah, and I'm gonna just say it right out, I'm gonna be biased on this movie in the sense that I'm going to be very open-minded with this film because I want it to do well, so I'm going to probably not nitpick at things that I normally would on other films.
Wouldn't
But
that be the
also
opposite of being biased?
I'm being biased in the sense that I'm going to overlook things that normally I wouldn't. That I would just because I want it to do well, right? I'm being biased in that sense. I just I'm going to force myself to enjoy this film, even if the critics say it's shit, even if the social media says it's shit, because it's something new. It's Superman at this point. It's what we have, and I'm going to force myself to enjoy it, and I hopefully it appeals to the mass audiences enough that it is a success and we can expound on the story from here because like we mentioned this before, this movie has to do well. It I'll say this, it just can't flop. It cannot flop. It doesn't have to be a hit, but it just cannot flop.
Well, and real quick, kind of final thoughts since we haven't done that in a while on this is given how many other because I didn't really realize I knew Fantastic Four was going to be releasing 2 weeks later, but I didn't realize how many other bigger
Yeah.
name movies were going to be releasing relatively, in a short time
Mhm.
afterwards. With the Fantastic Four and like Jurassic World Rebirth and all of that, and then Smurfs. Like oh
Yeah.
my god, But there are some decent sized movies going to be releasing right after that. That is not going to give it. I mean, you got to figure that means basically 2 weeks after the movie releases, Fantastic Four is going to be the number one, and
Mhm.
then it's going to pull from people seeing in week 3 and 4 of Superman. It's going to lower
Yep.
those numbers substantially because it's such a big, I mean, regardless of whether it ends up doing well, the first weekend or two is going to take up a lot of the box office numbers.
Well, and
So
again, the stuff after that we've discussed this. The stuff after that's residual nonsense. Maybe people couldn't, they were busy, couldn't go see it the first couple weeks, or uh,
rewatches.
whatever rewatches. Yeah, it's just I don't know. I don't see and I've seen the trailers and stuff. Don't get me wrong, I want to see Galactus and I want to see them do that well, but also Fantastic Four: First Steps is awoke. It's permeated with it. I I really just can't stand Pedro Pascal. I just think that movie's going to be shit, which is unfortunate because I like the aesthetic of it. And I don't think Superman, even if Superman doesn't do well, I don't think it's going to be because of the Fantastic Four, in my opinion.
I
But
agree with you on that. So,
yeah,
all right, guys, if you have made it with us this far, we definitely do appreciate it. Consider giving this video a like. If you like Superman, you got to go ahead and like the video, right? He's got the new symbol on there. Let us know down in the comments. How are you feeling given all of the news that we just went over, as well as just all the news swirling around here? Are you excited? Like, you know, are you holding out hope? Are you cautiously optimistic? Let us know how you're feeling on it.
or if you're saying fuck this and you're not going to go see it, let us know that too.
And you're allowed to, man. If you still believe that we should be in the Snyderverse and all this, you're allowed to feel that, man. We're not hating on you for it. That's fine. But
No,
this is all we're getting right now, man. Like, I want to see a Superman movie. I'm sorry. So, but
yeah,
that's fine. Let us know if that's how you feel and you don't want to go see it. You can let us know that too. We're not gonna like berate you for, oh my God, you need to give it. I mean, I think people should if you're Superman fans, but it's not I'm not we're not going to hate you for not giving it a shot. I get it, man. There are some things you just go into and you just say, I'm closing my mind off to the idea of that. I don't want to deal with it.
yeah.
You're
But
well within your right to do that.
I will say, if you do say that, please let us know why you're not going to go see it, because I we will make notes of that and we will address those in the video review that we do of the film to say, oh yeah, you were totally right about that, or no, you're full of shit. That's not what happened. So
Might find a nicer way to say that than that, but um,
depends.
yeah, it really depends. If the movie was actually super fucking awesome, be like, "You're full of shit, man."
Full of
No,
shit.
no, but
Yeah.
yeah. Let us know. Like, if you don't want to go see that, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with loving the Superman that you love, and you don't want to see any variations. It's a free country, man. You can do what you want, and it's a free channel. You get to do and think what you
Mhm.
want on this channel. We never delete any of your guys' comments.
Except you need to hit the like button and subscribe, because if you don't, your computer will get a virus.
Yes. Are you trying to say trying to go viral?
Is that? Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, we're
Yes.
gonna go viral.
So spread this video to all your friends because it's a computer virus. Take it from me. I am a doctor. Dr. Toboggan. Mantis Toboggan.
Yes, that one.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Before this episode ends up going off the rails, because as we keep going through, that's what's going to happen. Is we're going to go more and more off the rails. That is going to wrap it for us on this episode of You, Me, and DC. Until next time, guys. We'll see you then.
Later.